Right. Hi. Hello there. Oh, that's some nice lighting. I really hope you guys can see me. Is this light too bright? We are talking about, let me just turn this light down just a little bit. Where's my remote? Imagine, where is my remote? Oh, I'm just gonna turn this light down a little bit. Oh, okay, I've just turned it up. Okay. Oh no, that's not good. Okay. Okay. That is that is not bad. Right, so today, okay. Welcome, guys. I'm live on TikTok as well as YouTube. So I'm just going to give people just a few more minutes to come in if they want to. Okay, I look good here. God, guys, camera angles. Camera angles. I really hope you can all see me. Can you all hear me? Let me know. Anyway, guys, welcome to welcome to this week's live video. So today I'm going to be talking about moving abroad and basically a lot like all the things that you need to have a look at, have to prepare before you move abroad. Because I am living, this is the third country. I'm in Australia at the moment, and this is the third country that I have migrated to. I've lived on 3 continents, obviously across for different things for different times. So when you are moving abroad, there is a lot to consider. So that's why I thought it'd be really good to have this chat about the things that you need to think about before you move abroad and the things you do need to consider. So I'm live on both TikTok and YouTube. Oh, pardon me. God, that was a bit. Sorry, that was a bit gross. Sorry, I didn't mean to burp there. So yeah, I lived in 3 continents, and this is the third country. No, it's the fourth. Yes, apart from my country of birth, this is actually the fourth country that I've been to, well, that I've lived in, which is Australia. So I just want to talk about moving abroad, all the things you should consider, all the things you need to think about beforehand. Because hey, moving abroad, guys, it's an extreme sport, especially if you're moving to a country that you don't predominantly speak the language, or you're not like a majority of the population. So it can be quite a lot. So I just thought, you know what, let me have a chat about that. So if you guys are tuning in, tell me, where are you tuning in from? Let me know, where are you watching from? So I'm just brushing my hair. As you do. And also, I would like us on TikTok to get to like 500 likes, and even better, like 1,000 likes. That'll be really good because it helps other people share the live stream and everything. And yeah, I will probably get started in a sec. Hi, happy days. You're watching from Brisbane. Hi. I was in Brisbane last weekend. I don't know if you see my travel vlog, but I was up there. It's quite nice. It was cold. I thought it'd be warmer, but it was a little bit cold. So yeah, I was in Brisbane as well. Really cute city. Um, Other people that are watching, tell me where you are watching from. That would be great. So anyway, I think I'm just going to get started now with the video. Oh, hi from New Zealand. Yes. New Zealand. I do miss New Zealand. And guys that are just joining, I'm actually live on both YouTube and TikTok. So I'm going to be responding to people who are saying hi from both. Let me take my gum out. This is a bit gross. How am I talking and chewing at the same time? So disgusting. So unladylike. Anyway, so moving abroad, like I said, this is the fourth country that I have lived in, apart from my country of birth. So I'm going to first talk about my background with like emigrating and immigrating and moving abroad. And then I'm going to go into the several tips for how to prepare to move abroad, in order to make sure that it's a success, in order to make sure that your mental health is protected, your physical health is protected, your finances are protected, and just to make it like an overall success for yourself. So, a little bit about me. Hi, so my name is Tembi, and I was actually born in Zimbabwe. So that's the first country I lived in. That is my country of birth. I was born in Zimbabwe, and when I was 8 years old, my family moved over to England, which is in the United Kingdom. So that was the second country I lived in. And I remember when I first moved to England, I didn't speak the language at all, did not. Well, I knew a little bit of English, but I really wasn't fluent in English when I first moved over to England. So I had to learn pretty quickly. But luckily, I was young, so it, I picked up the language pretty well. So yeah, well, hi, Wisdom. So I picked up the language pretty well. So I lived in England for 19 years. Wow, 19 years. And of course, in that time, I was obviously, traveling and got to see the cultures and stuff. So I lived in England for 19 years, which was a very long time. So that was from the age of 8 up until the age of 27. Wow, which is a very, very long time. So it was the second country I lived in. And then the third country I lived in was New Zealand. So a lot of, well, some people who are watching this would have found me when I moved to New Zealand. So I moved to New Zealand in August 2021. That was the third country I've lived in. And yeah, New Zealand was New Zealand. And now I'm living in Australia. I don't know how long I'm going to be here for, but nonetheless, I am living here. And I also want to acknowledge, second of all, is that I do have the privilege of having a British passport, which has made life a lot easier, especially when it comes to emigrating and getting visas. I know that when I talk about moving abroad, it's not something that is accessible to everyone. And I do understand that people have got different circumstances and different passports, different socioeconomic things, different demographics, which of course is going to make it so much harder for them to move abroad. So I just want to acknowledge that and say that, I definitely do understand that before we move on. So having lived in 3 continents, which is Africa, Europe, Australasia. Are we in Australasia? Is this Australasia? Or is Australia its own continent? And is New Zealand Oceania? Oh my God, that is embarrassing. How do I not know that? I'm just gonna Google this quickly. Like okay, guys, tell me, which continent is Australia and New Zealand in? Are they 2 different continents or are they the same? Is Australia its own continent? Because in that case, I don't live in 4 continents. Guys, tell me, otherwise I have to Google this. Oh my God, which continent are Australia and New Zealand? Which continent are Australia and New Zealand? Oceania. Oceania. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Oh my God, that sounds like such a flop. So Google has told me Oceania is New Zealand and Australia. Okay, so I've lived in Oceania, I've lived in Africa, I've lived in Europe, 3 continents, 3 completely different things. I had to learn a new language when I moved to Europe, which is the UK, and all that lovely stuff. So having moved abroad as a child and having moved abroad in my late 20s and as recently now as like a month ago, there are some things which I have learned about. There are some things which I have thought about. When it's when it's come to moving. And there are some lessons that I've learned along the way, some things which I probably should have done a bit better before I moved. There are some things which I think could have been done better when I was a child, when my family moved. So it is, this is where sort of these tips come from. They're just based on my own learning experiences, okay? Based on my experience of living in 3 different continents and 4 different countries. So, how to move to another country, some tips and some some tips for you guys to think about. The first thing, which I think is so important, yeah, guys, is to save. You've got to save some money. Ideally, you should give yourself, if you know that you're going to make like a permanent move, you select your country, you're like, okay, I'm going to go live here, this is my game plan. Ideally, I think you should give yourself about sort of 2 years or so to save, because especially if you're moving with a family. I've moved alone, yeah, but like if you're moving with a family, if you're moving with kids, you've got to make sure that you account for. We're going to talk about this later on. You account for at least 3 to 6 months worth of housing, bills. You've got to think about visas. You've got to think about flights. You've got to think about just the cost of like buying extra things once you do get to your location. And then you've got to add about 10% on top just to be safe, because when you move abroad, especially with like exchange rates, you need to make sure that you've got a safe, comfortable amount, because you never know. Like you might not get started with your job straight away, or if you don't have a job before you move, you might find it really difficult to find employment. So this is why your savings are so important. If you have a job lined up, make sure that you've got enough money plus at least 10%, so you know you can survive in the country before you start working. I'll give you an example. When I moved to New Zealand, I there was a month gap between me landing and me starting work. So I landed in August and I was going to start work like 4 weeks later in September, like, you know, the beginning of September. So when it comes to that, I had to make sure that I had enough money to last me for the whole month. For the whole month gap. Luckily, in that time, this is when New Zealand was still doing quarantine. So for 2 weeks of those, I was in quarantine. And in quarantine, obviously, all of your food is paid for, your electricity, your gas. I didn't have to find accommodation or anything like that. So I was quite lucky in that sense. So I only had to think about like the extra 2 weeks, but then also I had to account for like rent, and paying like a down payment for an apartment and paying for a deposit and things like that. So those are the things you have to think about. Like, how soon will it be before you start work? Do you even have a job in the first place? So I recommend having at least 6 months of it. I know it sounds like a lot, yeah, but like when you're abroad and you've moved, and if an emergency happens or something, just anything happens, you can't be left penniless. Because more often than not, when you first move abroad, you don't have access to like that country's like benefit system or anything like that. So really, I would say about 6 months worth of expenses just to be safe, plus 10%. And that figure will depend on you. That will depend on the size of your household. If you're by yourself, great. If you've got like a family, then great also. But this is where your preparation comes in. You should be, if you're looking to move abroad, I suggest, people got different timelines, but give yourself at least like 18 months to 2 year time horizon. So if you know that you're definitely going to move, like right now, let's say we're in 2023 and you're like, oh, I got to leave my country, I want to move to this place, then I would say give yourself, just say aim for like 2025, because you've got to make sure you have that money. And then also, coming on to saving money, make sure that you research exchange rates, because your money, depending on where you're coming from, is going to have more or less power, just literally depending on which country you're coming from. So for example, if you're moving from Australia to the UK, your money is not going to be as powerful because when it comes to the exchange rate, your money is going to be halved and you're not really going to get the true value of your money. Whereas if you're moving from like the UK to Australia, you can have a little bit more wiggle room because the exchange rate with the Australian dollar is a little bit better. Same if you're coming from the pound to the euro, whereas if you're coming from the euro to the pound, it's going to be a little bit dodgy. Or if you're coming from like the pound to the US dollar, your money is going to be different. So make sure you research exchange rates. Make sure you research currency exchange rates and exactly what value your money is going to be when you do move abroad. Okay, the next thing, and people, this is a step that I don't see people talking about, which is something I did, which I'm really happy I did before I moved to Australia, and that is to renew your passport as soon as possible. So for a lot of you out there, you have a passport that's like valid for 10 years. I think that's quite standard. 10 years is quite standard. So I think you should make sure that you renew as soon as you decide to move, even if you have like 4 years to move. It can take a while with things like visas. So before you know it, by the time you get to your new country, all of a sudden you have like a year left on your passport or just a couple of years. And it is so expensive to renew a passport from abroad. Guys, I'm speaking from experience. I had to renew my passport last year from New Zealand. The amount of money I paid in postage, guys, I had to pay to post my old passport and pay for the return, as well as the application, as well as the passport application itself. Guys, that stuff is not cheap, okay? Whereas if I had renewed my passport before I left the UK, my passport would have had like, 9 years left. Instead of when I arrived in New Zealand, I only had like less than 2 years left on it. And then it was going to expire like pretty soon anyway. So you do not want to be also the postage system, depending on what country you're going to, might not be reliable. So make sure that you arrive in your new country with a passport that is valid. Okay. We need passport validity. Okay. So make sure you renew your passport as soon as you like make the decision or just before you leave or anything like that. And then also another reason why it's important to make sure you renew your passport is because when it comes to moving abroad, yeah, a lot of like your visas, your work, etc., will be tied to your passport. You have to like give your passport number for everything. And if everything is on your old passport that you need to renew, then you got to go and change all of that stuff when you get a new passport. So for me, when I had to renew my passport from New Zealand, not only did I have to pay a lot of money to get it renewed and all that stuff, I also had to pay to get my visa. I had to also pay to get them to change the passport that was on my visa because my visa was on my old passport, which is a lot more money. So guys, make sure that you you get in there with like a good solid passport. Yeah, and hi everyone that's watching on TikTok. I'm live on YouTube as well, and on TikTok, I would like to get like at least like 500 likes on this live. Same for YouTube, guys. Like the video, help more people to find it. The next thing that you need to think about when it comes to moving abroad, and I know this seems the most common sense, is to apply for your visa. Getting a visa is one of the most, I'll say, nerve-wracking aspects, and it's often the first thing that people do before they save, before they do anything, or they do it in conjunction. But you've got to apply for your visa because the whatever country you want to go to might not accept your reasonings for wanting a visa. So someone said, did you have a UK address to renew? No. I didn't have to post it to my UK address. I had to post it to the passport office. Tell you where you need to post your passport. So you have to post your old passport, and then you need a return address where they'll send. So I needed to give them my New Zealand address, but they told me it was like I think it was just basically like HM Passport, whatever their headquarters was, is where I had to post my old passport in order to renew it. But anyway, I was saying in terms of visas, make sure you research your visas. Do you want to stay in that country permanently? Do you want to go there and work? Do you want to only work for a certain amount of time and then you have to renew it? What rights will you have on each visa? All of this can be absolutely nerve-wracking, and it can be a lot. I personally, when I moved to New Zealand and Australia, I did the visa process myself 100%. However, I would say probably hire an immigration advisor, which is a person who is qualified to give you advice on different visas and can do applications for you on your behalf or anything. So you've got to research your visa. You've got to see what rights you have on the visa. You've got to see what working rights you have. You've got to see when they'll expire, when it needs to be renewed, and all that lovely stuff. I will just talk a little bit about my visa experiences. So I moved to New Zealand on at the time, it was called a critical purpose visa, because I moved during COVID and they needed healthcare staff. During COVID, they were giving out these things called critical purpose visas. So on a critical purpose visa, I could enter New Zealand. It was valid for a year. And whilst in that year, I had to apply for a longer term working visa. So that's exactly what I did. I got in with a critical purpose visa. I immediately applied for a work visa, which was processed very quickly because, again, I was a worker. This new visa that I went on to was called an essential skills visa. It was only valid for 3 years, and it was based on my job, and I was tied to my job with that visa. So I had to stay with that particular employer. And if I wanted to move employers, I would have had to apply to change the visa. So a lot of countries have got those kinds of visas. They're normally like sort of tied to work. They're normally tied to there are normally like certain conditions that you have with those visas. In terms of the rights that I had with the essential skills visa when I was in New Zealand, I could access all healthcare for free. What else? I could go in and out of the country. So I had multiple entries into New Zealand. I could leave and go whenever I wanted. I'm trying to think, what else did I have? It was like healthcare. I could go in and out. Guys, my mind's gone blank. Just search up essential skills visa, but it wasn't permanent residency. So it had an expiration date. Also, I couldn't. I think I could access benefits. I think I could have some benefits, like as in, I don't know what you guys call it, welfare if needed. But thank God I never needed it. But anyway, that was the visa I was on in New Zealand. And in Australia, I'm here on a working holiday visa. So a working holiday visa is a visa that is available to people who are under the age of 30 or 35 for certain countries, where you can come to Australia and you can work and travel. It's like mainly like working in a traveling visa for young people. And on this visa, I can work, which I am, thank heavens. I don't know what I have rights to. I think I really, oh God, I really need to research what are my rights on this visa. But those are the visas I've picked. So none of them were like permanent, indefinite leave to remains, permanent residency, or anything like that. And I think in New Zealand at the time I wasn't eligible for a permanent visa. And normally a lot of the permanent visas that would be good for me to get would be tied up to my job. Like I would need to apply like under a skill. I would need to score certain points, and those visas often take longer. So I was like, let me just go for the temporary ones and figure it out later. But I know that other people want to immediately go for that permanent one, which I think is great. Like absolutely, but they normally take longer. They normally cost more, etc. And then speaking of visas and money, now I love talking about money. Visas are expensive, guys. They are not cheap. Immigration services, yeah, they will charge you for everything. Like, those people make money. They will charge you for an application fee. They'll charge you to get a medical. They'll charge you for everything. So getting visas is expensive. So what you need to do is to make sure, if you can, get someone else to pay for that visa. And how can you get someone else to pay for your visa? The easiest way is to get like a visa that's tied to an employer or get a sponsor. So normally employers to employer sponsored visas, they tend to be, and I'm only speaking of knowledge from New Zealand and Australia. Those are the countries I know have the most knowledge of. But when it comes to employer sponsored visas, your employer will make a deal with you as part of the recruitment package that will pay for your visa, but you have to stay with us for a certain amount of time, or your visa will be tied to that employer, etc. But the way that visa fees are, I highly suggest that that's also a route that you go down. If you can get like an employer sponsored visa, because visas are not cheap. I'll give you an example. Like in Australia, to get like a skilled migrant independent, so that's if you've got like a certain skill or a trade and you want to apply independently of like an employer or anything like that, that's going to cost you like 4,000 Australian dollars. That's just the application. That doesn't count getting your documents verified, that doesn't count medicals, that doesn't count everything else. So yeah, immigration can be costly. So make sure that you get like an employer to sponsor you, because I think, pardon me, get like an employer to sponsor you, because that just makes life a lot easier. Okay, the next thing, which I think, apart from visas, is, and I know it's a little bit of an unusual point, but you need to accept that this is going to be a long road and it's not going to be easy. And we're not just talking about the application here. The mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they focus on getting to the country, as in, I'm just focusing on moving, I'm just focusing on arriving, I'm focusing on arriving in London, I'm focusing on arriving, but they don't think beyond that like, what will life be once you do land, once the excitement of landing gets off. So I would say that moving countries is not easy, because you're moving away from your culture, you're moving away from your people, you're moving away from a country where, if we're talking about, for example, race, if you're moving from like a predominantly Black country to a predominantly white country, or vice versa, if you're moving from a country where they speak one language and all of a sudden you have to adjust and learn another language, it is a lot. And a lot of people don't think beyond just arriving and beyond just the job. So you have to think and have a strategy for, when you land, things are not going to be easy. You're going to have to find accommodation. You're going to have to get started with work in a country you're not familiar with, in a culture you're not familiar with, even if it is another English-speaking country or another Western country. Like, I moved from England to New Zealand, but New Zealand has got a completely different culture. They've got a completely different work culture, things I had to get used to, even though it was a Western country. I still had to adjust. You've got to think about also things like the weather. Guys, the weather. The weather will shock you. I'll go into a lot more detail, but you've got to accept that none of it will be easy. It is a long process. I think it's like moving abroad, I would say, is a marathon. It is something that is not easy. It is something that mentally you got to get your head in the game, and just think logically. The next thing you've got to think about is healthcare, because healthcare varies significantly around the world, and your rights to access healthcare will be different because you're a migrant, and also because of the country that you are migrating to. So in terms of healthcare, if you have pre-existing health conditions, you have to really think, where will I get my medications? Are there specialists that can treat my condition? Will I even be able to get a visa with the condition I have? Because I know in New Zealand and Australia, they have medicals as part of what do you call it, as part of the immigration processes. And if you have certain illnesses, if you've been diagnosed with certain things, they will not give you a visa because they will say this condition or this illness is going to be a burden to our healthcare system. So think about health. Um, and you got to, and this is where like health insurance really comes. It's easy to fix this because you can have healthcare insurance, and then you can just, yeah, that can cut, that healthcare insurance will cover you in the event you have an emergency or whatever. But then also certain visas will give you certain rights. So like I said, in New Zealand, when I first went to New Zealand on a critical purpose visa, which is a temporary visa, I didn't have access to healthcare. I could get like emergency treatment if I like broke my leg and went to the emergency department, or it was only emergency care, but anything else I would have had to pay for. GP appointments, I would have had to pay for until I got like a longer term visa. And I think that's the same case here in Australia. I think it's like Medicaid or Medicare. You can have emergency treatment, but anything beyond that, you got to pay because you're not like a resident or you're in a certain type of visa. So think about healthcare, do your research, especially. And like I said, just see like what you are entitled to. The next thing you got to think about is money. And within money, I know I've talked about saving, but I also want to talk about other things in particular, especially if you've got like investments and pensions and housing and taxes and bank accounts. And I know that's such a big that is quite a broad, like, because money is a huge topic. I would suggest, this is something that was part of my relocation package when I first moved to New Zealand, but nonetheless, I highly recommend it to everyone else. So, as part of a relocation package with my employer, they got me a financial advisor, someone who I was able to have a chat to about all of my finances, someone who I was able to chat about my finances, to think, which bank accounts do I get? Do I move money? Not that I even have, not even that I had or even have money anyway, guys. But I had things like a pension. I'd been working for a few years. I had a pension. I was like, do I move that to New Zealand? I have, I invest in the stock market. I'm like, do I close down my stock market accounts? If you have a house, you might think, do I want to sell my house? So a lot of things financially to consider. How do you move your money? Should you move your money? Like a lot. And how will all of this affect your taxes? How will your taxes, especially in your new country, be affected? So it's a lot to think about. So I just say, look, get a financial advisor. They cost a lot of money, but it's absolutely worth it, in my opinion, just to have a sit down with like a qualified professional who can tell you what your legal rights are, especially with your money, and whether or not to leave your money in a certain country, whether or not you should take everything with you. And yeah, so I recommend get a financial advisor who can talk to you about your finances. So for me, the financial advisor I spoke to, because like I even have any money anyway, and to be fair, you don't need to have money to speak to a financial advisor, actually. Yeah, you don't need to. But the financial advisor that I spoke to told me to just leave everything as it was in the UK, because I might still go back to live in the UK. I don't know. So there was no point in me like moving my pensions. There was no point in me moving everything to New Zealand because I didn't know if I was going to be there permanently. So it's just a look, leave everything as they are. Tax wise, you're going to be fine because you're not going to be earning money in the UK, and you got no tax obligations in the UK, so you can go. So I got the okay from that financial advisor to go ahead and do that. So I suggest that you do the same as well, especially if like your finances are a little bit more convoluted than mine was. The next thing that I think is really good to think about. Guys, I haven't done a list. I really wish I'd done a list, but we have lost counts. Is you have to prepare your family, especially the family that you're leaving behind. Okay, they've got to be prepared. They need to have a heads up because one of the hardest parts about emigrating is the fact that you are going to be leaving a lot of family behind. You're going to be leaving your close network. You're going to be leaving the people that know you well, and all of that stuff. So that is tough, and people need warning. People need a heads up. I would say give people, I don't know, give people at least 6 months heads up, especially if you're going to be leaving parents, grandparents, cousins behind, especially if you're really close to them. Do give them a heads up because for them it can be quite difficult. The news can be quite difficult. It can be quite tricky. It's hard for you as the person who's leaving, dealing with all the guilt. People need time. They need a warning. Having said that, though, be careful about who you tell your news to because not everyone is going to be happy for you. Not everyone will be happy for you. The fact that you're going, I believe I know this is kind of going off topic, but I seriously do believe in like energies, and I feel like some people's energy, or some people can like wish you badly, or some people can just wish for your downfall, and some people can wish that you don't succeed and things like that. So I know when I moved from the UK and I moved to New Zealand, I think it was only my immediate family that knew that I was going. But even that, I didn't tell my immediate family until I'd started the application process, until I'd gotten a visa. And that's because I wanted everything to be official before I told anyone. And I remember some of my close friends and colleagues, I only told them once I got like my medical approved and I was like 8 weeks away from leaving. My colleagues, the only reason my colleagues knew was because I actually handed my resignation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told any of them. So you got to give people a heads up, but make sure that you give the right people a heads up because not everyone is going to be happy that you're moving. Some people might be jealous that you're moving. Some people might feel like they're being left behind. Some people might feel like a sense of entitlement to your life, and they might think you're selfish for taking away the kids, taking away the grandkids. So there are lots of things and lots of factors that you need to think about, but definitely prepare people to move. Make sure that you tell people where you're going to be going, make like a schedule for how often you're going to see them, how often you're going to come back. I made a promise to myself anyway that I was going to see my family at least once a year, so at least I know I have that to look forward to. They've got that to look forward to as well. Prepare them. If you know that it's going to be a while before you get your visa and your work sorted, before you can move back home, tell them that as well. Get everyone prepared for the fact, get everyone prepared for that. Ricky on TikTok has asked, how long are you in Australia for? I'm in Australia until I leave. It's a tricky question because at the moment, I don't have an exit date. I haven't yet bought my ticket to get out of Australia. My visa is valid for a year. I do need to go back to New Zealand, but I don't have a date just yet. So I'm in Australia for as long as I'm here. I don't know. I think the answer is I don't know, but I know I do need to go back to New Zealand later this year. And I do have like work obligations, and I do have like all of my stuff as well is still in New Zealand. So that is somewhere I definitely need to go back to New Zealand. But I just haven't bought my ticket just yet because I'm just not sure when I'm going to be leaving. I'm not sure when my contract is ending. So a lot of things are just still up in the air. Where do you see yourself settling down eventually? I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to see myself settling down. I would say I would say one of the reasons why I've traveled so much is because I am looking for that place that will feel like home. You know, England didn't quite, guys, the UK is miserable. Let me not even try and like sugarcoat it. It's a bit dead up there, guys. Like, it was soul sucking. But nonetheless, it's still a nice country. New Zealand was really good, really, really good, really stable, really beautiful. It's got its pros and cons, but New Zealand was nice. I really don't have like complaints about New Zealand. Australia, I'm still getting to know it. I'm relatively new. I'm in a small town, so it's going to take me a while. So I don't know, but I don't know where I see myself settling down, but I do hope it'll be one of these three countries. Um, I'm not sure what my criteria will be for settling down. I don't know, will it be a home? Will it be a family? I don't know where I'll end up settling down, but like, I hope it's one of these three places. Because moving is long. As much as I do like it, it's really long and it can be quite taxing. He said, you need to come to Sydney. I was in Sydney a month ago, actually. Sydney was pretty. It was nice. I'm a city girl. I like cities. I like that nightlife. I like skyscrapers. You know, I like people. I like diversity, multiculturalism. And Sydney definitely has that. So I would definitely come back. Right. So the next thing that you need to be prepared for when you move abroad is your mental health, guys. Moving abroad is a marathon. You're moving away from everything that you know. You're moving away, like I said, in some instances, you're moving continents. You're moving. Your children are moving from the school that they've always been in, their friendship, their network, your family, your food, your culture, just little things that you don't appreciate until you move abroad. And also, when people arrive abroad, especially if you've got family to support back home, a lot of people tend to just work, 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 and they don't take time to rest. They don't take time to look after themselves because they're just working to send money back home, working to just work and work and work and work. And people can wear themselves down to the bone and they don't look after themselves. I have to say, especially, I found this in New Zealand, the first like 4 weeks after I got out of quarantine, I felt like I was exhausted at the end of every single day because my brain was working in overdrive. Obviously, I wasn't familiar with any of the streets. I had to Google map everything. Like everything was like new, like brand new. Work was brand new. The way that they spoke was brand new. Even though it was English, it's still a different culture, different ways of life. Meeting different people, you're meeting a different person every single day. You're figuring out where the grocery store is. You're figuring out what food you need to buy from the grocery store. So flipping different. So if you're not careful, that can get on top of you. And if you're not looking after yourself, if you're not resting, if you're not eating well, if you're not exercising, if you're not getting into routine, if you're not getting some sunlight, if you're not having your vitamins every day, multivitamins, if you're just not looking after your body, it can really take a toll on you. So make sure that you've got to prepare to make sure that you keep your mental health in check. Otherwise, it can really get on top of you. Because moving is it's quite a lot, you know. It's quite a lot. So I would say also the next thing that you need to consider when you're moving abroad is housing. Housing. All of these things, they're at the top of the list. And when it comes to housing, a lot of it will have to be research based, as in what is the best neighborhood to live in, what is the safest neighborhood, how much will, what is going to be within your budget. What I would recommend is that you don't make any decisions about location until you arrive there, because you can read about different neighborhoods on Google. You can read about different schools on Google. You can read about what's best is best, but you're not going to know until you actually arrive and land. And sometimes reading about something on Google versus walking down the actual street is going to be completely different. So you might look at a certain house and think, oh my God, it's so pretty, it's nice on Google, whatever. And then you arrive and then it's like, oh my God, it's a pile of rubbish. So I would suggest never sign up for a rental before you arrive. Never like put a down payment. Never make a decision, especially if you've got kids, about which schools your kids go to until you arrive. And the way you can get around this is to, for the first, at least, I'll say minimum 2 to 4 weeks, get an Airbnb, get a hotel, get a little service department. Yeah, it's not going to be cheap, but spend that time going around the neighborhoods. Obviously, you would have shortlisted everything. Actually, go and see houses in real life, especially in New Zealand. Guys, some of those houses are not built for purpose. I hope New Zealanders don't mind me saying this, but you guys know, yeah, some of your housing is not good. It's a bit crap, okay? And you can't just trust the pictures. So you need to make sure you do it in person. Some schools, go and see the neighborhoods, go do a walk around yourself, and actually wait until you get there. Yeah, it's yeah, it might be a bit more difficult to find a rental, especially if you've got such a short time horizon. But I feel like in the long run, it's worth it because you're not going to be stuck in bad accommodation, and you're not going to be stuck in a neighborhood that you're just not feeling. So yeah, highly recommend. Wait until you get there. Okay. The next thing, which I think, not I think, I know you need to think about is, I've written all the things down, guys. That's why I'm looking it down. The next thing you need to know is be prepared for the worst when it comes to your work. I know that sounds really morbid. And this point applies to people who secured a job prior to immigrating, or their job is tied to their visa, or their employer is the reason why they are, in that country. I would say just be prepared for the worst, because if you're prepared for the worst, then surely it can only be good, right? And what I mean when I say be prepared for the worst is that you're going to go into a completely, not only are you moving jobs is hard enough in everyday life, moving country or not moving country, but you're going to be moving into a different work culture, a new manager, a place where you might, like I said, you might not speak the language, new systems, new everything, okay? So I would just say be prepared for the worst, prepare to have a shit manager, prepare to have shit colleagues, prepare to not know what you're doing for the first at least month. Just prepare to just not do well. And then once you prepare to not do well, surely if it goes better, then you're not going to be surprised. I think what I mean is just temper your expectations. Don't expect everything to just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna be the boss, I'm gonna make friends with everyone, because you literally might not. Okay. And then also make sure you're there for a visa, you're there for a reason, you're there for the money. Don't get involved in any workplace drama or anything like that. When I first moved to New Zealand, I was there because of my job. I mean, my visa was tied to my job, is what I'm trying to say. So for me, um, I found that, like, I think I was really worried that I wasn't gonna like it. I was really worried. I was like, oh no, what if I don't like it? My visa's tied to this. It's gonna be complicated if I want to quit. Because the thing about me, yeah, I will quit. I can happily quit. Um, you know, I'm not let's sit down and grind. Like I can quit. I've written a few resignation letters. I'm not afraid to do that within reason, of course. So I was really worried that I wasn't gonna like it, etc. So I was just like, let me just prepare for them to just be the worst people. And then obviously when they were like really great people and I had a great manager, I was like, oh yay, great, I can relax. But do you see what I mean? I didn't get, and the fact that I was prepared for it to be quite difficult also meant that, like, I was on my A game when it came to work. I wasn't going in there all blasé. I wasn't going in there like chilled, relaxed. I was going in there like prepared. I was going in there with like my head screwed on. I was going in there with like a game plan of like, okay, this is Tembi. This is what you need to do. get your act right, get yourself on. God, my throat is hurting. God, I haven't talked for this long in ages. Yeah, so be prepared for all of that when it comes to your workplace. And the next thing you need to consider, and again, this is, I would say, this is a really good one as well, is to discover your transport options. So think about your transportation and how you're going to get around. Are you planning on buying a car? If you are planning on buying a car, make sure you put that into your budget before you go. Or are you going to ship your car? Pros and cons, which is going to be cheaper to ship your car or to go and buy a new car there. Transport wise, are you going to be getting public transport? How far away is going to be your workplace from where you live? Is it a place where you can commute? How's the public transport system? Guys, New Zealand, I'm sorry, New Zealand, yeah, this is another disadvantage, is that Auckland. So in my example, the case for me when I moved to New Zealand was that I wasn't planning on buying a car once I got to Auckland. I just assumed that I'm going to be in Auckland, I'm going to be in the biggest city. Therefore, I can just like get the tube, get the bus, travel around the city that way. I assumed that it was going to be like London, because in London, especially central London, you genuinely do not need to own a car. It's actually more expensive to be a car owner in London. And there's no point in most cases to own a car if you're living in London, for example, because you can get anywhere. You can get anywhere with yeah, you can get anywhere with like the public transport. So that I assume that Auckland would be the same. But no, Auckland is not the same. They don't have a great underground system. They're trying, bless them, but it's not that great. The public transport system isn't that great. And so I was there like in my first week, I realized that I gotta get a car. Otherwise, I'm not gonna be able to go anywhere. And there were a lot of places in which I couldn't go, and I was quite limited in my mobility simply because the public transport system was not great in Auckland. It really wasn't. So that's something that you really have to think about. Don't assume that you're moving to a big city that the transport is going to be easy. So if you are going to buy a car, for example, are you going to buy it cash? Are you going to get it on finance? How's that going to affect your finance? It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay, I've got a couple of questions here on TikTok because I'm live on TikTok as well. Victor said buying a 40K loan and buying a 1,500 car, which is better or more socially accepted. Okay. So Victor is asking, is it better to get a car on finance versus like a cheap banger or a cheaper car? Which one is more socially accepted? It doesn't matter about social acceptance. You need to get what is best for you and your household. You know, if buying a newer car for you is better for your household and you can afford it and it's in your savings, great, go for it. If buying like a $1,500 car that's in your budget, then go for it. In New Zealand, what I ended up doing was that I knew I wanted to do road trips across New Zealand. I wanted to travel across the country. And I didn't want a car that was going to um that was going to break down. I didn't want to be like paying for breakdown costs. I didn't want to be going to the dealership constantly to like get the oil changed and get this and that changed and all that stuff. Like I just wanted a car that worked. So I got a more expensive car. I got a car, transparency. I got a car that cost 12,000 New Zealand dollars, but I put quite a large deposit on it and it was on finance. But the cost benefit was the fact that it had lower mileage. It only had like 20, I think it's like 30,000 kilometers on it, which is pretty much, it was secondhand, but it was pretty much brand new. And I never had any problems with that car. And that car is still in New Zealand right now. It's still in storage and it's still worth quite a bit of money because it's in great condition. And I've paid it off now, so I now own the car. So yeah, that was good for me. So you've got to think, what is best for you in terms of in terms of you moving, in terms of you sort of adjusting. Is public transport going to be it? If you've got kids, they'll need a car. Are you going to be planning on going on day trips? A lot of things to consider. And on the other hand, not owning a car will save you lots of money as well, because you're not paying for petrol, you're not paying for insurance, you're not paying for breakdown services, you're not paying for tax, road tax, anything like that. So I got another question from Tim, who says, good morning. Seems like the perfect timing to see you live. I'm looking at getting out to Australia at some point. Some info about moving from the UK will be great. Oh, fantastic. I was talking about visas earlier. If you want to move from the UK, there are lots of opportunities for different visas in Australia. I'm not an immigration advisor, so let me not lie. Some advice. Take my advice with a pinch of salt, I would say. Don't sue me. But there are lots of different ways you can come. You can come here as on a working holiday thing. If you're under the age of 30 or 35, you can get like a sponsored visa with an employer. But that would depend on whether or not you have a skill. Ideally they do like you to have like a skill or a trade. Or be like a professional of some sort. Your visa journey will definitely be easier if you've got one of those. But I recommend, I don't know your specific circumstances, but I just recommend going on the Australian immigration website. They have got there are so many visas, guys. Even I felt overwhelmed when I first went on it. And I know they do have a questionnaire for like your specific your specific circumstances and what you can do with that. And then I've got like a couple of other questions as well that people sent in earlier on, because I did a community post. And I was like, oh guys, what is going on? Tell me. Let me just get those questions up. I hope your day is going well. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, my day is fine. My day's actually finished now. It's like 20 to 8 at night. So I've been to work, I've come back. I haven't had dinner yet. But yeah, I've had a good day. I've had a really good day. So it's actually been it's been pretty calm. It's been pretty good. I am looking for Look how unorganized I am. I'm looking for something. Oh, where is this? Guys, bear with me. I'm looking for a specific question that someone asked me earlier on about moving and transitioning and all of that stuff. I am looking for, let me see if I can find it. There we go. There we go. There we go. So this person asked me, what admin stuff should you organize before or after you move, such as bank accounts, licenses, health registrations? So I've touched on all of that stuff in terms of, like when it comes to money, especially bank accounts, I would say speak to your financial advisor before you go, because your financial advisor will be able to tell you about taxes. They'll be able to tell you about a lot of those. They'll advise you on your bank accounts, which ones to keep open, which ones to keep closed, like so many things. Licenses. So driving licenses is another one you should research into. Some countries will allow you to convert your driving license. So I know, for example, UK to like New Zealand, I could just convert it, and I could just convert straight to a New Zealand license. And I think that's the same. Right now, I have a New Zealand license. I'm using my New Zealand license in Australia because you can, but I can convert my New Zealand license. So I would say definitely do your research, and the best source of information would be like that particular government's like Home Office website to see if you can still drive or still use your valid documents in your new country compared to your other country. When it comes to health registrations, a lot of countries these days, when it comes to accessing healthcare, it will depend on what visa you have, but you can always access healthcare anyway. The safest way to safeguard against this, to safeguard with this, is to make sure that you have health insurance. And how much money should you have before moving abroad? I would say have at least, to be safe, 6 months worth of anticipated expenses saved. Oh, that's a lot of money, guys. But a lot of things can happen, a lot of things can go wrong, and there's the potential for you to be completely by yourself and completely isolated when you are abroad, and especially if something does go wrong. So make sure, to be safe, you've got at least 6 months plus 10% cover for every eventual possibility, cover for like just everything, you know. But anyway, guys, I've been talking for like an hour. I feel like my throat is hurting. I'm gonna have some dinner. I'm gonna have some dinner now. I really hope that was helpful. I'm gonna continue posting lots of videos where I can. I will try, guys. Please don't hold me up to that. I'll try to keep posting about like Australia and keep you updated. Follow me on TikTok, and yes, guys, I've had a really good time watching. I've had a really good time on this live. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys coming. So I'm gonna end this now. Any questions, leave in the comments below. Thank you. Bye.